A brief opening text reveals that the film is mostly based on a true story, inspired by the life of Gary Johnson. The movie begins in a college classroom where a man named Gary Johnson is teaching his students about Nietzsche. One of the students interprets Nietzsche's philosophy as encouraging risk-taking and boldness. Gary nods in agreement, but he overhears another student laughing about the car he drives. This makes Gary reflect on whether he's truly taken risks in his own life. After class, he drives home, where we see his two cats, ID and Ego. He lives alone. He feeds his cats and begins narrating about his life. He explains that in his free time, he works with the New Orleans Police Department to track down people who hire hitmen. The scene then shifts to Gary sitting in a van, keeping an eye on a man named Craig. Another officer, Phil, informs him that Craig has multiple assault charges and drug possession on his record, so they need to capture him. Suddenly, a female officer, Claudette, arrives and tells them that their usual undercover cop, Jasper, won't be able to go after Craig because he was suspended for fighting with teenagers. Claudette and Phil then encourage Gary to go undercover, pretending to be a contract killer in order to capture Craig. Despite feeling anxious and worried about his safety, Gary ultimately agrees to go through with the plan. He steps out of the van and approaches another car, where we see Jasper, the suspended officer, fuming over his 120-day suspension. Gary informs him that he's taking his place and asks if Jasper has any tips or advice on how to act like a hitman in front of Craig. Jasper advises him that, to convincingly play the role of a killer, he must avoid showing any weakness and should act aggressively. Gary then heads to meet Craig at the cafe, while his team monitors the situation through cameras installed there. He introduces himself to Craig as Billy. Claudette and Phil are shocked by how convincingly Gary plays the role of Billy, to the point where they begin to believe he's a real hitman. Craig directly instructs Billy to take out his target, handing him $2,500 up front and promising another $2,500 once the job is done. Gary smoothly accepts the cash, and the two of them walk out of the cafe. As they step outside, Gary catches sight of a police car closing in. Moments later, the officers swoop in, swiftly arresting Craig. Gary approaches Phil and Claudette, who praise him for his excellent performance. They commend him for convincingly playing the role and successfully capturing Craig. Over time, Gary continues to successfully apprehend more would-be killers, skillfully adopting various personas as hitmen to cater to his clients' needs. He even has to sit in on their trials when they accuse him of entrapping them in murder schemes. While most of them receive jail time, some, like a woman who sought to pay Gary to kill her husband, walk away scot-free after their potential victims forgive them or the jury finds a lack of sufficient evidence. Meanwhile, Gary's newfound confidence and experiences begin to reflect in his teaching, as his students become increasingly attentive and engaged. The next day at the police station, Jasper tries to convince his superior to let him return to his old duties, but the superior insists that Gary is doing the best job posing as a hitman, and suggests that Jasper take a role in traffic patrol instead. Outraged, Jasper snaps back, saying he'd rather clean toilets than work in traffic patrol. The superior then advises him to lay low and keep his mouth shut. He then hands Gary a file on a woman named Madison Figueroa Masters. Intrigued, Gary checks her out on Facebook, only to find scant information about her life before her marriage to Ray and no criminal background. Later, Gary meets Madison at a diner, posing as a man named Ron. Madison confides that she wants her husband, Ray, killed because she's fed up with their marriage. Despite her request, Gary finds himself drawn to her and persuades her to reconsider. He advises her to take the cash she would have spent on the hit and use it to start a new life elsewhere. Then they depart from there. Gary is at the bus when he receives a call from Claudette. Claudette and Phil are furious with Gary for letting her go, and Jasper returns from his break, frustrated that the sergeant prefers Gary's approach over his own, leaving Jasper feeling sidelined and concerned about the police's image. After a while, Madison sends a text to Ron, inviting him to a dog adoption event, even though Gary prefers cats. When they meet at the park, Madison shares that she is getting a divorce from Ray. She notices that Gary seems less like a scary hitman and more like someone who enjoys being around people, especially since he interacts well with the dogs and kids there. Later, Gary and Madison go out together and eventually head back to her place to be intimate. They continue their relationship, but Gary keeps it a secret from his bosses. During a date with Madison, Gary notices that they are being watched by a drunken Ray and his buddy. Ray gets really angry when he sees Madison with another guy. When he threatens to hit Madison, Gary quickly pulls out a gun, which makes Ray back off. After that, Gary and Madison decide to grab some food, but things get tense when Gary spots Jasper. Jasper walks over and only talks to Gary, calling him an old co-worker, but he doesn't tell Madison what's really going on and leaves. The next day, while Gary is with his team, Phil informs him that he's needed to play hitman once again. Phil tells him that his name is Mike and waiting him in the restaurant. Gary meets with him, positioning himself across from Ray without revealing their faces to each other. It's then revealed that the man Gary is meeting with is actually Ray, Madison's husband, who has been using a fake name. But when Gary turns toward him, he quickly realizes that Mike is actually Ray, who's trying to hire him to kill Madison and her new boyfriend. Instead of going along with the plan, Gary confronts Ray, intimidating him and driving him out of the diner before Ray can say anything incriminating. Without hesitation, Gary rushes to Madison's house to warn her that Ray is plotting to kill her. A little while later at the police station, Sergeant tells Gary that Ray has been found dead, likely because a drug deal went wrong. Gary rushes to find Madison to share the news, but she surprises him by saying she shot Ray after he had told her he wanted her dead. In a moment of honesty, Gary admits that he was never a hitman and that he had been lying to her all along. This revelation makes Madison really angry, and she tells him to get out. Back at the police station, the police identify Madison as the main suspect in Ray's murder after discovering that he had raised his life insurance policy by $1 million, with Madison being the only person set to benefit from it. Jasper interrupts, pointing out that he saw Gary and Madison together in a restaurant yesterday. Hearing this, Gary quickly covers for himself, claiming he was just walking down the street when he met Madison. He insists she doesn't even know his real name, explaining that he introduced himself as Ron and nothing more. The officers then decide that, to catch Madison off guard, they will have Gary confront her and try to get her to confess to the crime while he is secretly recording their conversation. However, Gary is unaware that Madison has already figured out his true intentions. Gary then goes to Madison's house again while Phil and Teams are listening their conversation. He discreetly uses his phone to signal that the police are listening in on their conversation. Madison then puts on an act, denying any involvement in the murder. Gary begins questioning Madison, subtly dropping hints about what she should say to make the police, who are listening, believe her story. His strategy works, successfully throwing the police off their trail for the time being. That night, when Gary goes to Madison's house again, he unexpectedly finds Jasper there, who is scheming to blackmail them for a share of Ray's insurance money. Madison offers Jasper a beer, and as he starts to go on and on about his plan, he begins to feel weaker and eventually passes out because Madison secretly drugged his drink. While Madison worries about the consequences of drugging a cop, Gary puts a plastic bag over Jasper's head and suggests they make it look like a suicide, since Jasper is already known as a junkie jerk that nobody cares about. In the midst of this chaos, they confess their feelings for each other, and soon after, Jasper takes his final breath and lies still. Years later, Gary has upgraded his classroom to a larger space, because he has more students now. He is happily married to Madison, and together they have 2 children and 2 dogs. One day, their daughter is curious and asks how her parents first met. Instead of sharing the entire story, Gary and Madison decide to keep it sweet and simple, telling her that they had a charming encounter at a cafe that changed their lives for the better. The movie ends with a special tribute to the actual Gary Johnson, who sadly died in 2022. He was a cherished college teacher, a veteran of war, a Buddhist who loved animals, and he never committed any murders at all. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more interesting movie recaps.